Let's just start with xAI. Why you got in, what the merits of it were, your analysis of what Musk's doing.
Yeah, I think if you think about the culmination of what's been happening in software for the last 20 years, it's not just AI has just sprung up. We've gone from machine learning AI to AGI, and I think that's a part of how to sort of think about the innovation that's happening. The data warehousing all the way to inferring that data has been sort of the culmination of what we see today. And so if you take a look at OpenAI, xAI, I think a way to sort of think about it is that 2 years ago, you had 0 people sort of thinking about requests per day around thinking about what they could do with AI and AGI. Today, it's about 500 million requests with just OpenAI.
Yeah.
That takes a certain amount of compute, takes a certain amount of power. It's almost equivalent to about 2% of power that Google has today in terms of their data centers. That's just one company. So when you have xAI, Anthropic, a couple of other companies that are going to be supporting the next generation of innovation.
You basically feel like there's enough to go around. But what's interesting, Arjun, we know you as an early stage investor.
That's right.
The numbers on the xAI round, which we reported, were astronomical. But you still got in.
Yeah, I think we're quant investors at the end of the day, even at the earliest stage. That's our expertise, this culmination of everything that I've done. And so what you're able to do is think about growth and loss. And it's powered by one of the systems that we have called Termina, which is like, how can you account for usage and interpretation of using a product? So if you think about growth and loss, you've had a ton of growth, and you've been able to see people use these products across not just one product, but multiple products, to be able to save for customer service, voice, et cetera. And so if you think about where xAI is today and what it's going to be in the future, where OpenAI is today and where it's going to be in the future, you start seeing 10, 20, 50x growth patterns. And that's the type of investments you want to make even at a late stage, because it's got early stage paradigms of growth.
What about future regulation, Arjun? How do you look at the data for that?
Yeah, I think, look, AI for us, at least from a high level, is the same way in which we think about crypto or blockchain. It's a technology. And so how is technology implementing? How is it augmenting the software that you're already building or the use case that you have? And so when we think about regulatory pressures, I think, one, we don't know what's happening week to week. It's changing very, very quickly from open source to closed source systems. And so when we think about how is regulatory top-down structure going to impact AI, I think we look to spend more time thinking about what is it that we did in the late 90s in the internet, dot-com era, and how is that type of thought process going to help machine learning, AI, software-driven innovation actually help drive it rather than sort of inhibit it.
I'm really interested as to where ultimately the money flows, because as we can see from NVIDIA's market capitalization, a lot have been in picks and shovels. Many feel that it can be in the application layer, many feeling that it's going to be ultimately in the large language models. How do you think about where wins the value going forward?
Yeah, so accrual of value really means where usage is going to be. So you have to think about the full stack. So you've got a model, people use that model, people are going to build applications on that model, but those models consume power. And so the more power that you consume, you're going to have to start thinking about how is that produced, how is that distributed, what do the data centers look like, what's the future of those data centers? That's why we're talking about NVIDIA. And then the next phase is going to be what are the applications that start using it. So that full stack will think about supply and demand paradigms. And those supply and demand paradigms is going to actually change your flow of capital. Today, most of the capital is happening on the corporate side, not on the venture side. And the corporate side is driving the first parts of the innovation. And then we come up and start thinking about where we're going to spend time on models and then applications.
Last week, I think it was last week, David Sachs was on the show and he was talking about Glue, his AI startup. And I said, well, we know you as an investor. And he corrected me and said, well, I started in technology. And that's the kind of thinking that I have when I think about Termina. What is your day-to-day involvement? Are you just kind of hands-on? Are you backing them financially? And what prompted you to sort of say, I can do this on my own?
So similar to Dave and other folks in the industry, there's a very small set of people that grew up building products during what I call data 1.0 to 2.0.
Right.
And so you built products understanding how to leverage data to be able to have fast iteration. So you think of Facebook, you think of Uber. What we did is very similar. Is over the last 10 to 20 years, and the culmination of my life and my team's work at Facebook and a couple of other these companies is like, how do you leverage data to build and iterate products? And that's what we do. So sometimes we build and sometimes we invest. If we build, it's because we've got a pattern of growth that we understand how to do well. So we've done that in India, we've done that in Mexico, we've done that here in the United States, where we take a large chunk, or we'll start 0 to 1, and from there we'll help propel that with another team. So I actually think that investor and builder mindset, depending on the stage that you start, isn't too different. It's just you have the expertise to execute it after that.
Caroline asked about the regulatory environment, about AI a moment ago. You have been through what happened in crypto, largely through a relationship with an exposure to FTX. Mm-hmm. Reflecting on that experience, this is a classic question, but how do you not repeat the same mistakes in this AI cycle?
I think it always comes down to supply and demand. So right now, you could ask the same question of, is NVIDIA overvalued or undervalued, right? So intrinsically versus options value. In crypto, you've had 2 or 3 waves where people spent their time thinking about speculation rather than intrinsic value. And during those peaks and troughs, you started seeing more and more intrinsic value.